People were asking about the plan for the afternoon. After lunch, we're going to come back here, and different teachers are going to be presenting, some for 10 minutes. Some presentations might be a little bit longer, but that we're going to keep to that schedule, and everyone will have a chance to present. Okay, is this okay? The lights can stay on, or we're doing okay? They're not flickering? Okay, are we ready to get back? John, if you would dim the lights just a little bit, because, I mean, not completely dark, but somewhat. Oh, it's either on or off. Okay. So for, Fran, it's fine. We'll go ahead and turn them off, John, if you could do that. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the plan. We're going to have an explanation about Sirdisome. I'm going to describe it. And Anne's coming at 11 to present. We're going to have lunch at 12. And at 1 o'clock, seems like we've solved the lighting problem, so we can convene here in the auditorium this afternoon. If the lights are dimmed and they don't flicker. So you can, they still flicker, so they probably need to be completely off then. All right. If we're ready, I'm going to start my presentation. Yay? Okay. So there's another art movement. It's also very important. It's part of Devia, and it's Sirdisome. And I'm hoping that you can consider a name sign for this, because many other countries just spell it. So it's important that we use Devia, but it's long. Some people have shortened it, made that kind of a name sign or a logo. So you might agree with that or not. But when I go to other countries, they're a little frustrated with having to spell that because it's an English concept. And deafblind, obviously, it's not very user-friendly for deafblind. So we're hoping that we can establish an agreed-upon sign. So this movement is also important. It's Sirdisome. Then this is the sign for it. And it came up through internet and the digital era, and it's really taken off. I mean, if we didn't have internet, I think it would be quite a slow process, but it's just expanded and been able to be shared and grown. So it's celebrating 10 years already this year. What it does is incorporates using digital media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and some of the social platforms. So the introduction is, it was formed by Arnaud Ballard, a French person, and he founded this in 2009. And the word comes from the French word sword, which means deaf, but he took the O off. Ism, meaning artist, like Impressionism, Cubanism, different art forms, different modalities, different mediums. So this also incorporates the deaf experience. Oh, you should go see his artwork on Facebook. The concept, the design, the mixed media, it's fantastic. Some of his artwork in 2012 was exhibited at a festival. And looking at some of his motifs, I mean, he has pages and pages, like, and again, in the French, he has a little bit of English subtitles, but he talked a lot about the goals for Sirdisome and a lot of similar attributes. And I can't believe that at 2009, you know, when we started doing our concept, that who knew that there was somebody in France that was thinking along the same lines. And so really a little bit more in depth and has expanded more in 10 years. So the internet here isn't great, and we do have some limited time, but I did want to show you this video of Arnaud Ballard and play this so that you can see. This is his manifesto, or the community that put this together, so it was a collaboration. Can you see me if I stand by the screen? Okay. It's a collective of international people. So while ours is based mostly in the United States, his is international, or theirs is international, I should say. It's positive, it's constructive, it's inclusive in its philosophy. It's anti-autism. There's no space for autism in their work. It supports creativity through theater, through literature, through film, through drawing. So again, using the new genres. And it's visual art. It's not just visual art, but it's accessing all the different modalities. And you've seen me do this sign, and it was established in from the French for representing the third eye. So the third eye, that's all-knowing. So, you know, we go with our instincts, you know, we have a creativity. So we say deaf have a third mind. So he based that on pointing to the third eye and then for show. I'm going to summarize the concept of Sirdisome for you. It really is anti-autism, obviously, and changes that paradigm to deafhood. Through analysis, analytical thinking, framing concepts, and revelation, Sirdisome can be accessible to the world. Here's some examples of how it can be embedded into what we already do with visual art and Devia. Also, he designed the deaf flag. And this is something that most people, most countries, they have some kind of symbol. That's their identity. Those are my people. LGBT people in the USA use a rainbow, and that's very powerful. So when you see a rainbow, I know that that's a safe place for me. And it makes a big difference for people when they see that as a symbol. So when you see this flag, this is something that resonates with deaf people. Could you just click on the link that's right at the very top? This is just a little bit of a description, to give you a better idea. Thank you. It's the video, I'm sorry, I need to be in the light. It's longer and very, very detailed. He has all of the policies and rules for that, and please watch it later. But as he spoke about the colors and the design, I think it's really important that we realize that for Sirdisome, that using the 3 colors is a design from his own incubation in his mind. And it has spread. I mean, schools for the deaf are using it, murals, the flags that's used in parades. I've seen it at different pride marches. It's just wonderful to see how this has taken off. In Scotland, there's a hearing woman who's been studying and how to make kilts. You know, that's very important in Scotland. And so she's selling scarves made with that kind of material and following the Scottish plaid. And then you see this one building here? Do you recognize it? It's the A.G. Bell headquarters. It's the Volta building. So as people started delving back into history and becoming more aware of the concept, you'll see more of that in different colors being inclusive, not just with Devia and Sirdisome, but in other events. So I want to show you some things like Black Deaf history. We have Black Deaf artists. Takia Harris. This is some of her artwork. And it was a picture of a family. They sued for the right for their child to go to Kendall, to MSSD. They really wanted to send her there. They didn't want to send her. I mean, Black students were not able to go to like their local school, so they sued. This was before Brown versus the Board of Education. That admitted hearing kids into a school that's near them. This was prior to Brown versus Board of Education. The family sued for the right for their daughter to go to the local school. So there's the nightclub shooting in Florida where people were murdered. There was a lesbian artist that was just full of grief and outrage. And so she used the lesbian identity and incorporated that into some of her artwork. There's a variety of artists that are emerging and starting to create art based on their experience and their own identity. Tony Nitko is going to be here later. I'd like to see more of his art because he's actually very, very good. Kim, are you here? Okay, Kim, this is some of Kim's artwork. We did a Devia challenge every month, and she's been doing that for every day for a month, so that was really cool. And Jenna, where are you? This is Jenna's composition. So visual art incorporates Devia and Sirdisome and also a lot of other components of art. This is really a wonderful ABC 1 to 5 story collaboration about slavery. So this is word by word what they incorporated with the A to Z story. Have you seen this before? Oh my gosh, this is outstanding. This performer is amazing. How he expresses himself, you got to see it. And now we have deaf theater. Have you seen Crying Hands? It's from Norway, and it's a World War II story about the bravery of people. It's very powerful. I haven't seen it yet, but friends of mine said, Patty, you have to see this. They're just an amazing performance. And another part of deaf theater. We have a lot more deaf cinema, and you know it's very hot right now, and there's more and more movies emerging with deaf characters or about deafness. Baby Driver, you know about this? C.J. Jones was in that. The Shape of Water, she's not a deaf actress. She was a hearing person. She learned sign, but really made people exposed to sign language on the big screen and just started to get it out there. And I believe films will change everything in the deaf world. It's such a powerful medium. It really just impacts people in a very visceral way. And I think film with characters is powerful. The Quiet Place, another movie, and The Silent Child. I believe this won an Oscar award in a short narration category. Has anyone seen The N? Oh my gosh, you have to. It is so good. It's a film from England. They have something called BSLO. There's a lot of films that the government sponsors through money and grants through the BBC. We have captioning, and we want to see more deaf people in there, but we don't always get movies. But the BBC supports and screens and looks at scripts and passes them on, either green lights them or not. And this is a great film. Oh my gosh, it will give you chills. It's a prediction of what will happen to deaf people and in war. And it's like an apocalyptic film because it shows you what you think it will be like in children that are young, and then they're 12, and then they're adult and old age, and it just follows these people. It's unbelievable. I'd say 20 to 24, 30, they didn't even know the year, but they thought it was something that was really happening. And I mean, it's such a good film because it's so realistic. It hooks you in. I mean, it's not a documentary, but it looks like it is. But it's what could happen. So watch that film. Now, you know, surveying the net and looking at things, and people are saying, well, can we include dance as part of this? And well, it's not really part of an experience, a deaf thing. It's an interpretation, much like poetry. That's not really coming from deaf heart. However, when we saw this piece from Nile, they danced to the Song of Silence, that song. And you know, people are watching that and said, well, that could be labeled resistance art. It's movement to a story, it's oppression, it talks about signing. So I think that there's one area that was worth a little bit more research. So I wanted to talk about the overlap when we talk about Devia and Sirdisome. And if you look at it like a Venn diagram, there's some overlap in the center. So we're not excluding one over the other. They both have heart, they both have soul, and they both ripple and resonate with people. They both have value. So this is Ballard's quote, and I really like it. So he says, autism denigrates, deafhood welcomes, and Sirdisome reveals. So a deaf artist, I mean, in general, as you know, we have many deaf artists, and they don't always do Devia art. They're just producing deaf art. But I hope some of you will welcome other people and welcome community members and let them know. I mean, last time we had over 128 people, and we're opening it up to the world, and now with Sirdisome, I think it's even more important. So, you know, using different kinds of media, Facebook and things like that. So we're waiting for the world to change, and we really encourage, and maybe you can help with the curriculum and some other projects. So this one, a lot of people, we invited parents and we said, you know, kids don't have role models. It's important to show through this work of art. So there's not enough that really is geared to children. A lot of it is very philosophical and graduate school level types of productions. So we need to make sure that we're not excluding our young children. We're going to have a big conference this fall. It'll be in November. And we're going to do theater and film and visual art connection. And it's a very, it'll be academically based. And Davia Central Facebook, encourage your students, if they want to submit their artwork or their questions, that's where they can do it. This Chinese, I love this Chinese philosopher, Ai Weiwei. This quote belongs, art should live in the heart of the people. And it's not just, oh, and I'm an artist and it's just reserved for me. It belongs to the people. And I love that that was Weiwei's belief. And again, that's how to contact me. Thank you all. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, could we have the lights up? So if you could go back, there's a request asking to go back on one of the slides. That's a tattoo of a bird. Oh, and this is, yeah, the Colorado school. Oh my gosh. What? I'm sorry. Oh, they were hoping to go all the way to the championship, but they got honorable mention. We had over 600 submissions, so those poor judges that had to go through all of those pieces. And then they only released who was the first, second, third, and there were some honorable mention. I was like, oh, I know that person. I know they were hoping to get better, but it means many more people, you know, we had to reject their submissions. But honorable mention's not bad. It's very beautiful. So you see the stars up here and the hands embedded. This is Nancy. I have a question for you. So are there rules? Oh, early bird registration for that conference is $200. It's academic based, so early bird is until July 15th, I believe. I don't know if it'll increase to $250 or what the cost is. Oh, and if I could just point out this, remember the poetry project? There was a challenge that we were just talking about. Rourkeism. Nancy was talking about it. Well, there's a poetry, sort of a poetry slam. And I was thinking, well, maybe kids listening to poetry with those headsets on and, you know, it's like, wow, I bet they wanted to throw those headsets and, you know how like the gangs would always throw their sneakers up on a telephone wire and they would wrap around? I have that vision of the headphones. That's what this is depicting. The conference is in November. I think it's 6th to the 9th. We have 3 keynote presentations. We're kind of a variety of presenters. There'll be an art showing in the museum there in downtown Rochester. There's a People Color of Art exhibit. There'll be a variety of performances. So they'll go to the website. The information's there. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take a little break and give Anne a couple minutes to get set up. So thank you.
John, Hi, we might need some help setting up over here. Thank you.
Hi, tech person? Yeah, the lights will be off when you start your presentation. But can I turn the slides off now or just leave it up here? Can you hide the projection for a minute, John? Can you? I see, hello? Hi. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'll try that. Yeah, he wanted the lights up. Please bear with us while we figure out the compatibility issues. Great, fantastic. Okay, if I can get everyone's attention, I think we're ready to start. Okay, would like to introduce Jim Van Manen and Ann Silver. Take it away. Hi, everyone. How are you all doing? I see some of my old friends and new faces. We're going to talk about the difference between pop art and some parallels between pop art and Devia. Some of you have obviously are here because you are encapsulated, entrenched, you love Devia. And so there was somebody here from the Warhol. She was supposed to come, and I guess the topic was if Warhol could sign. That happened. That didn't happen? No, I thought it was I thought that was the title. We looked at that and we thought, oh, that was mostly talking about a sign name for Warhol. Oh, no, so we didn't miss anything. So we were wondering, what would the point be? Let me clarify for you what we talked about, catch you up. So 2 themes. We talked about his illness, and that maybe that related to him having, a hearing loss, but that's not true. And then if he were still alive, with Instagram and things like that, he would be using that fantastic medium in his art. So those were kind of the 2 things we talked about. Well, yes, and of course he's a popular cultural figure. So, except there's one thing I have to disagree with the points you were talking about. You know, there are many and she has a lot of above 65. People do not use that kind of medium. They're not just involved with social media. They always are having to ask younger people to help. So Warhol would have had to have like a little cadre of people, his little worshipers or whatever, and they probably would have had to help him. But people of that time will not fit in today's world. There are people that are expert. Look at Nancy Rourke. Holy cow, what she can do from the past and how she's been able to incorporate social media and all of the technology in today. But she's rare. It's rare. Okay, so ready to go? So the first image in England with pop art, it started with the British. Richard Hamilton, a hearing person. Oh, wait, go back. So the image is really this big. We've blown it up in size. It was actually in folders. At that time, he made things, was an independent group, and they would show with each other and kind of pass it around. It would be like a one room, like a classroom. And now artwork is, it's famous and it's shown everywhere, and this is iconic, but at the time, it wasn't. So we call this, a lollipop? It looks like it's right inside there. Inside. So we call it the lollipop. So pop from this. In another piece from 1947, both considered where we got the name pop art from. So that's why. So that's kind of the roots of that. So in 47, you have to fast forward to America, to 57. And it wasn't called American pop. It was just pop art. So the British called it pop art. We called it pop art. A few British people that came to America and started taking off with pop art, the British, it was kind of ended around 67, 68. It's interesting, it kind of faded away after a short time. But pop art in America continued through 60s and 70s. Okay, are you aware of a deaf person that was included in their popular art, pop art movement? No? Oh, I know, it's a guy, not Harry, looks like Harry Potter, right? Because of the glasses? No, I know. Come on, give me a name. David Hockney. He was famous in his work. This is one of his iconic pictures. Did you know he was deaf? Well, he had a hearing loss he didn't sign. You are correct. His hearing declined, and during the 60s he made that, but already his hearing loss was pretty pronounced, but he was in denial. But recently I think 2 years ago, he celebrated his 80th birthday. He said, yes, I am deaf, and I think deafness helped my art. Oh yeah, you saw that interview. So from the 60s, from 67, he already made the jump from England to become a popular pop art artist in LA. So what's pop art about this? It looks like a picture of what? What's so special about this? Well, if you look at the diving board, the water itself, can you see the water, or is it in there? Everything has a meaning. There's no base. It just jumps out at you. So each section has a feeling of pop art. But at that time, people were looking at that and they thought, okay, well, that's interesting. It was 60s and 70s, and people seem to be very obsessed with water. What's the deafness related with water? Okay, you can sign underwater, so communication underwater can happen. But if you take away the signing, what's so great about deaf and water? Right, you cannot hear underwater. We're on a level playing field. We're all deaf underwater. So when you talk about water being incorporated into a lot of the pop art, okay, I want you to go forward. Okay, this is a lot of his work related to water. Showers, the same idea. When people are like, blah, 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 in a shower, you can't hear each other unless you're really yelling. And the reason that he was obsessed with water is because we're all on the level playing field. He was probably deaf already, and that influenced his art because of the hearing loss. And since the beginning of the pop art, he was using these images. So prior to pop art, what kinds of movements happened, just prior to pop art taking off? Okay, so we are talking about pop art owes its roots to, the Dadaism, right? Dada movement, right? Okay, so then that morphed into pop art. But prior to pop art, I'm talking 50s and 60s, abstract expressionism was the genre. So, and at a growth out of that, the realism movement, those sort of made parallels. So meaning, you want to make it look real, like a photograph, or do you want to make it so abstract expressionism? So it's very different in its roots. There's sort of like a boundary. It could look like an illustration versus art. So many people went to art school. I'm sure you remember this debate. Oh, is that art? Or should I become an artist, or should I become an illustrator? And pop art removed that boundary, that line between the two of them, and allowed them to intermingle. So pop art is, anything can be art. So instead of trying to discern what is and what isn't that, pop art said anything. We can use something simple to the complex. This is art. And Warhol had his box of soup cans, right? He painted that, and he said, that's art. The box itself is just the medium. That's art. And people said, what? That's art? And, sparked a big debate. And then De Via probably would not have been ready to emerge if not for this movement. Because when we started talking about deaf expression, and that can be called art. We owe that because Andy Warhol said, yes, anything can be art. Any pop art can be art. Don't be stuck in the abstract expressionism that says, oh no, there's a very hard line and it's very defined. He broke those boundaries and removed that separation. So that's why we say we need to thank that pop art movement that allowed our history and Devia to emerge. You know, there are other media, other genres, the color aspect in the 80s, again, very influential on Devia, but pop art is where our roots came from. So if you're not familiar with Hamilton, he established he's from Britain, but he started to define pop art. So it's something that can be transient. It can be viewed by people, which is interesting because a lot of things that they called, you know, temporary transit has stood the test of time. You know, people maybe mocked it initially, and it's still there. So when things are new, people say, oh, we like that. We want to keep it, as opposed to, oh, we have to get rid of something to replace it with something new. And again, I see some interesting parallels to Devia. Anything that you notice that jumps out? Comment back here? Well, the motifs, he describes the motifs, so he defines that specifically. Humor is in pop art, so there's some parallels there that will make a message, right? So here's an interesting contrast. We talk about big business. Is deaf art big business? Not really. I mean, people who commit to making deaf art, they have to accept that there is going to be challenges, that they have to do a lot to make a living. Big business doesn't have to worry about that. But there's a little bit of an opposite parallel there. So there's three descriptions of these terms. One is from Jewish word kitsch. Well, it's been used in pop art a lot, like things are kitschy. It's kitsch. Oh, I like that. It's not deeply research-based, but people think it means, oh, that's really cool. But that is not the true definition of kitsch. It's really something that people don't prefer. They have an initial visceral reaction to that when they look at it. And it's something that internalized. I mean, think of the things that are kitsch in your life. Yeah, okay, so a sign that you probably would sign like, oh, sick, but it's now part of your life. Well, here, I'll come up. So, you know, if there's a specific kind of food, you have like liver. That for me is like, oh, your family was poor because you had to have liver. Or certain other things that people don't like because they had a visceral reaction, and so they've labeled that, but then it's kind of incorporated into who they are. Like hearing aids. Okay, everybody doing I love you. Oh, I love you, I love you, I love you. When I see that all, you know, on clothing and everyone was saying that as a term, right, that's something that you're sick of seeing, but it's now part of our life. Oh, the emojis. Okay, so you've got all the smiling and their eyes, and there's just a myriad of emojis. Okay, so people are kind of sick of them, but we use them anyway. LOL, oh, that's a great example. Okay, so LOL, people are like, no, we didn't start that, but now it's part of who we are. Lava lamps. People are like, oh my gosh, I loved that when I was growing up. So that concept, that's part of kitsch. Like the I love you. We love to hate it, right? Now, campy. It can be similar to kitsch. Something that you look at and it's like, it's too loud, it's too ostentatious. But on the other hand, I kind of like it. It starts to grow on you, you know? Becomes popular. So that I love you. I mean, you get kind of sick of it, but then after a while, it's sort of like, hey, if I see a person using that, like a famous person, I go, aw, that's great. Right. Okay, so there was like an old movie, and then people look at it again, and they're like, why did I ever love that movie? It's so stupid, but it's become campy. Oh, A Christmas Story with that lamp that's the leg. Oh, that is such a beautiful example. That is campy. Yes, with that leg. But everyone watches that movie, and we know what to expect, and we love it. It's so bad, but it becomes good. Okay, now, cultural icon. It's similar to what we've just been talking about, but it encompasses all of the people who recognize a thing. It's automatic recognition. What it means, what its purpose. So when time goes on, it becomes embedded in the culture. And it's easily recognizable. And in the deaf community, what do we have that embodies that? Okay, again, I love you. Well, that's the first thing you said, right? A cultural icon is the I love you sign. Anyone involved with deaf culture would recognize the I love you sign, right? Yeah, because you said it as the first thing. I mean, that crosses into the hearing world, like 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah, the I love you, everybody knew that. So you laughed, but that's one of them. Closed captioning, CC, on TV. We would use CC or we would use the captioning. No, I don't know. Maybe in a bar they would, because the captioning is on in bars. Is that something that would be recognizable? Oh no, the symbol CC. In the deaf community, they would understand that. But would hearing people automatically recognize CC? I would say that's probably a deaf culture icon. You know, we know, oh, is this movie, you know, can we watch this movie? Yeah, we can, because CC, closed caption. Well, the general hand like this, what does that mean? Sign, does that mean sign to you? That means stop. It means stop. Okay, it may be iconic, but as a cultural icon that's generic to the population, I don't know. Well, maybe that symbol, again, we call that as a symbol. We're kind of delving into the symbol versus cultural icon, but that symbol of interpreting has become sort of something that people recognize, or closed captioning. Well, for a short time, the TTY, that little symbol. Well, again, we're talking about symbols versus cultural icon. So some are symbols, but are they necessarily cultural icons? What about actors like Marlee Matlin? She's a cultural icon. Oh, okay, that's an interesting point. Oh yeah, I could see that. Nile has become a deaf cultural icon. Maybe Gallaudet University as a college can be a cultural icon in the deaf community. No matter where you go or not, people know Gallaudet means that, like all deaf know. MSSD, people know that. And TID, those symbols are well known to the deaf population. So yeah, they could represent a cultural icon. Okay. So in America, pop art, deaf are part of. So would it be Anne? Are you awake? Okay, so you know why she's up. She has disappeared behind the podium. Ann Silver. While we were preparing for this presentation, I have to tell you, Fran, thank you for inviting us, first of all. I don't know who else is involved in the presentation and setting up the conference, but Fran reached out to us. And I really wasn't aware fully of how much Anne influenced and was influenced by pop art until I was preparing for this presentation. Even though I wrote a book about her, I was still astounded at what I found that wasn't even included in the book, like you can't imagine. I wish she could present Friday night. She'll be presenting now because you will have no time between now and Friday night. You know, that's why I pulled her and I was trying to put so much into this presentation, but you've got to know. And one of the beliefs I have that Silver, we're going to label her as a pop artist and also as a deaf artist and a Devia artist, all inclusive. And it's not really like what she emerged in pop art, it's really her collaboration with the culture and the people of that time that influenced her. Many, many parallels. I mean, I called her before the deaf Warhol because there were so many parallels between her art and Andy's. So she knew him. And she'll talk a little bit more in depth about how well she knew him during Friday night's presentation. It's Friday night, right? The closing ceremony at the gala, right? It was almost, I thought I told you the wrong day. No, Friday night. So come see her present. So Silver and Warhol collected autographs while they were young. Now, why were you collecting autographs? Come on out from behind the podium. Well, my mom forced me to do that. She said, go out and meet people, and when you meet them famous, get their autograph. She wanted me to learn how to socialize with hearing people. She kind of had an autograph collection herself growing up that she wanted me to do it. But I really hated having her force me to go up to people. Oh, Mom, I don't want to meet those people. But I forced myself to do that and interact with them, and I got their autograph. And now when I look back at that, my God, I have to thank her for that. I mean, I wasn't thinking about dollar signs, like how much that would be worth. Those autographs are worth a lot of money. That wasn't my view. I mean, what a great investment, right? And my mom never thought of the money part. She was my homeschool teacher. You know, she taught me speech therapy. She forced me to meet people. So, and what was interesting, you know, Warhol was very sick when he was young. And he was home a lot. and he would write letters to famous people, and they would write back and give him their autograph. And if you see like famous people, like for me growing up, I'd say, oh, wow, those are people that are in New York. And then, when I was in Seattle, Washington, I was like, oh boy, those people are in New York. They're famous, And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at this wonderful life. And then I went to New York and I made it. I was there for 16 years. And then Warhol moved from Pittsburgh to New York. So again, just like Jim says, amazing parallels. Again, to show the parallels, commercial artists, they both were. Andy Warhol was in the fashion world, worked making book covers, made over 2,000 book covers during the 70s and 80s. Silver was involved as an illustrator and in addition, art director. Andy Warhol made his way up the chain of the fashion world, doing a lot of different kinds of artwork, and then became a gallery artist. And same thing happened with Silver. She became a gallery artist as well. Obsessed with celebrities, famous people. Oh, wow, people, they both kind of worshipped those famous people and always talked about that. And, she would say, sometimes Silver will text me and say, oh, this famous person died. Oh, really? I mean, she is just obsessed with famous people. And when Andy Warhol, he became famous, but he was obsessed with other people who were celebrities. He always had a fascination and followed those people. This is Anne, if I can jump in a little bit. So Warhol, I wish I knew his name sign, but we were always spelled Warhol. What I know about him is that he was always moving. He always had a camera or a tape recorder, always strapped to his side. He had that camera, and then he would have a pen and paper. And I was like that too. I would kind of, roam around. And then what he would do is he would photograph people, like in front of them, but people would feel nervous. They would feel naked without that. You know what I mean? Like he felt like he was powerful if he had that camera. So he always had to have that. He never knew he was going to meet a famous person or not. So, and I, had to manage the power over them. So, if they were going to take a picture of me, I had to make sure I was ready. Well, the camera for Andy became a tool, how to approach people. I have a reason if I have a camera, or, if I'm just standing and I'm just me, how do I start a conversation, right? He was not an overly friendly person. And I mean, it looks like from the photographs that she's also very friendly. She's a very private person. Well, you're right. He would do photographs as an art to collect them, which I did also, but he did them as an art project. And I thought, well, photographs are better than those dang autographs. And autographs are really hard to do with people. You always have to have something. But when you've got a camera, you can use the camera to take those snapshots in time, and then later you can think, oh, maybe it could have them do I love you, and do that. Like, that would become very iconic. So, hi, can I take your picture and can you do the I love you sign? So sometimes they were separate categories for me. Like for my personal book, I would collect people signing I love you, and then just regular. And then Andy would do the same thing. He would collect those pictures and do silk screening. Oh, that's something also I was remembering. He would take pictures of famous people, and then they would line up, and he'd say, okay, well, he was before, he would take a picture of the person, he would make art, and so he would use that silk screening process, as Anne mentioned, and make those images again and again and again from that picture. Anne would take the picture for a book that was never published on just these I love you photographs of famous people, the hands. It was never meant for publication. She has those in various slides, but she never had the opportunity. So it's interesting because his was definitely to create art. So that was another interesting parallel. Oh, I could be here for a week telling you stories about the two of us and the parallels and things that we had in common. I was probably slightly ahead of him on the art spectrum, but for example, the Mona Lisa, we had to do like a little drawing in pencil. Well, he did that, and a year later, I saw he did the Mona Lisa in a silk screen. And then I made an art piece of a motorcycle at Gallaudet. And then years later, I saw that he did this motorcycle drawing. I mean, it's like, how can I say this? Like an invisible twin, the two of us were. Like my brother separated at birth. Well, I think there's a lot of living parallels. Mothers were very controlling. She was heavily influenced him. Silver's mom kind of controlling by telling her, get the autographs and go meet people. So again, some kind of interesting similarities. So, I'm sorry. Did you want to talk about? Oh, that's the last slide. No, that's not the last. You're the baby of the family, right? Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Oh, wait. I didn't know that. Okay, so going back to the I love you, I want to show you some of her photographs. Okay, so Senator Harkin, do you know that guy? Do you know who he is? Okay, from Iowa, deaf brother. I forget his brother's name. But anyway, my point with this, so he met Silver in '88. And he saw the DPN, and she saw that in DC. And then in '89, he wrote part of the ADA law. He is the one that wrote the ADA. If not for DPN, he would not have added those clauses and the ADA into law. So he realized deaf can. I mean, he was already aware because of his brother, but he realized what roads were open for the deaf, and by the DPN movement encapsulated the ability of deaf people all over the world. And so she took a picture of him. This is kind of again, doing the icon, and he could sign a little bit because of his brother. Gene Wilder. He was videoing a movie, and Silver being Silver kind of went in and said, hey, and you don't have Richard Pryor's. Oh yeah, I do. Oh, okay. Well, oh yeah, you didn't put it in the book. But the image you see here, we'll be putting in a Ann Silver deaf art book. But for this image, which we took from her collection, to get permission from a famous person, you have to say to that person, are you okay if I use this in a book? So the secret is that he would never say no to her. So we put that in the book, we knew. So she's very assertive, and she found a way to get to him and to take a bunch of pictures. So she's been able to do that. Now I'm going to show you just a few examples of her vast collection. Okay, so you want to talk about this Japanese woman? Well, she is a hearing woman, but very involved in the deaf community. Involved in Japanese theater for the deaf. She signs very fluently. And so that's kind of, in summary, my connection with her. Well, let me add a little bit. The interesting story about that is, do you mind if I take a picture of you signing I love you? And she said, well, no, I want to go to Japan, and I will hire my photographer, and I will get in my full gown, my full kimono, and I'll have my professional photographer do that, and I'll send it to you. And they went back and forth because Anne didn't think she would do it. I'll never see that picture, but she did. She fulfilled her promise. Oh, that's right. I didn't add the rest of the story. Thank you, Jim, for that. Okay, do you recognize this person? Famous author. Right, Seeing Voices is another book that he wrote. But he wrote about the deaf community. He was fascinated, and he wrote a book. And she found the book and approached him and said, could we do a picture? And at the time, he was in New York, and it was a little bit easier to get with him. Well, he wanted to write a chapter about me and my experience being in Japan and learning the 2 different languages. And that's another long story. Leroy Neiman, he's hard of hearing, and he has since passed, but hard of hearing for many years. Met Silver, and she said, could I go into your studio? And he said, are you deaf? And he told her that he was also, and they became friends. Are you familiar with his work? With Neiman's work? Very vibrant colors, does a lot of sports things. Some animals, uses many colors. It's not very simple. It's, very brightly colored. Let me just add, the world did not know that he was deaf. He did not want that to be known. Very different, like David Hockney, initially was also very reticent about letting people know, but he told me. Well, remember, 60s and 70s, people didn't share that. But people that knew, that's fine. But nowadays, it's become much more open and more accepting. And again, people that were deaf but didn't know sign. Now, Harvey wrote a play after he met a deaf person. The play that he wrote became famous, just took off. And Anne, help me. Torch Song Trilogy. Torch Song Trilogy was a Broadway show, and it is about a deaf man that he met and introduced Silver to, and they became friends. So he was like, oh, thank you for my career, because if he hadn't met that deaf person, maybe, would they know Charlie? Charlie was the person that that Harvey met, and the play is about Charlie. Not a lot of people know that. McKinney, right. Thank you. Charlie McKinney. So when he wrote the play, let's see, The Newsies, and then there's another one that he just wrote, Kinky Boots. And he also portrayed the character in Fiddler on the Roof. So he is very, very involved in a lot of the genres in theater. La Cage aux Folles, he was in La Cage aux Folles too, right? Yeah, The Birdcage. The production that was in, so it was originally from a movie or whatever, then it became a play with the music, and so again, that's sort of another aspect of his career. Okay, she has hundreds. List goes on, but nobody has seen them. Nobody has seen them till now because it would be impossible to publish that book. How do you get permission from dead people? Oh, another one here. To have access to them, she, in an interesting way, with relationships with people and their partners, the doctor would introduce her and let her go to parties, and would invite the doctor to the parties, and that would be like as her quote-unquote partner, and then had access to the parties, and then once in, just went around with her camera and just would ask famous people, hey, can you pose and do the I love you sign? Ann, did you want to talk any more about any aspect? I know, I don't know how much you want to share about that aspect. No, there's so much I feel I can't really say, but there's so much. How to pick and choose all of that, it's difficult. Well, one of the things, the doctor, again, remember in the early 80s, that was one of the first doctors who's willing to serve patients that had AIDS. Again, people didn't really know too much about AIDS. That doctor was very willing to provide support, and was well known in that field. And so a lot of people would invite that doctor during the 70s and 80s because of what was going on in the community with AIDS. Okay, so some of you, when we saw Obama doing I love you, I was like, oh, right? Because we just said, oh, we're so sick of the I love you, but guess what? Here's a famous person doing I love you, and we just loved it, right? So we can't really say, oh my gosh, we're so sick of seeing people do I love you, because here he is, and we just went crazy. Am I right? You agree with me, right? Oh my gosh, Obama did the I love you sign. And it was interesting. I found this picture. This is, no, I found it from the internet, not from Silver's collection. So when I found this, it doesn't say I love you. Underneath the caption says it's a religious symbol or some secret hand symbol or something. Totally not true, and I thought it was a little comical. Oh, one thing I forgot to add. In Seattle, they have every year an art fair. It's international, actually, very well known. And when I was in Seattle, it was there, and there's also one in Miami. So I saw this I love you sculpture in wood. It was just this beautiful, ornate carving in every aspect. And so the Seattle art community, they have over 500 booths of these different artists, and it's in this big building. So as I'm going along, I see this I love you sculpture. And so I said to the dealer, do you know what this means? And the dealer's like, I have no clue. And I said, do you know who made it? And he said, I don't know, an artist from Italy. And the artist was there in another booth, and they were talking to other people, and so I grabbed them and I said, is this yours? And they said, the vendor doesn't even know what it is. And so they wrote to the vendor and said, it means I love you. And the vendor didn't believe me. And I said, okay, well, let's look on the internet. Maybe you'll believe the internet. And here were all these, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And so the dealer, I think, hated me after that, but it was like, you didn't even know what you were selling. So in the deaf community, people of you in the room here, having a discussion about cultural appropriation, misuse of things that are cultural icons. And so here this guy was selling this and not even really understanding that it was a cultural icon recognized by the deaf community. All he did was grab it and put it in this art exhibition. And I would ask you, would he be allowed to do that? Or should we say, hey, no, you can't do that. That would be best served by somebody that this is applicable to. And so here's an example of appropriation by him not knowing. You know, there's people on YouTube that are collecting millions and millions and millions because of that YouTube boy from Utah, you know, having the I love you symbol. And that was kind of like his symbol. And that's why we hate the I love you, because it's not ours anymore. You know, it's just become something where people would make that sign. is that pop art? Is it a symbol? Is it really a symbol of deaf culture? I mean, it's an interesting conversation to have. Well, right, we see that spreading. It's on shirts and, at Target, and you see ABC on a different variety of things. Okay, in other countries, when they come here, it kind of spreads. Okay, so another concept. Okay, so that appropriation of the I love you, that's been happening, for years when people were doing, is it I love you or is it the, rule with the devil or whatever. So people are saying, well, I invented the I love you symbol because I was doing that at a concert. Well, no, they were really doing what we use now as, rock punk band music. It wasn't really the I love you symbol at all. Okay, so as we're looking for different symbols, I love you, again, there's parallels that we see I love you showing up everywhere. I mean, I'm sorry, we're having a difficult time seeing you. You might be easier. Yeah, that's better. Okay, yeah. Okay, so here's my question for the two of you. Okay, so all these photographs of people doing I love you symbol, but where are famous deaf people? They don't usually do that, right? I do. When people take my picture, I'll do that. I mean, I never remember people taking pictures if they're going to do a portrait or whatever. Nobody would do that. I mean, so now you might see kids doing that, but in your time, would you have done the I love you as someone was taking your picture? I'm just curious if there's like parallels that kind of moved away and have come back now. Let's see. In the 70s, okay, wait, let me correct myself. I was a senior at Gallaudet, and I was doing an independent studies. Okay, she was a senior, in 72, thank you. So the book project with all the I love yous, I had Betty Miller as my teacher. Many of you know her. So she was looking through this, and at the time doing some research, and I submitted these photographs. And the purpose, I wanted to make a real book later, after I graduated, which didn't happen, as you know. I added to it, but I had collected pictures of old people doing I love you dating back to maybe 1889. Yes. And mostly from the 30s also. So there was a very strong, tournaments for the deaf were very popular, and you would just go from one tournament to the next. And so I saw that being passed on from tournament to tournament, from deaf school to deaf school, and then at Gallaudet. So then there's some pictures from 1920s where they were doing I love you. This deaf couple were doing I love you with the palm orientation the opposite way. And that means I love you not. Okay, N, like that way means I don't love you. This way means I love you. Like I love you not. You know, when you do that with the daisy, you pull the petals off. I love you not. So, and I meant to do more research on that, but I don't know. Do you have an idea about that? Yeah, we'll talk at the break. So, one thing I wanted to add about famous deaf people that you took pictures. Yeah, that was his other point. Okay, so, well, to talk about leveling the playing field. Yeah, it seems like it's heavily weighted with hearing people that were doing that. But I do have pictures of deaf people. The deaf president. I mean, I could name drop, but we don't have enough time. She'll think of them. But I guess the concept, if they were living during the 80s and 70s, she probably has her picture. If they were famous, she probably has it. And even though she didn't publish the book, I remember a famous sushi chef, and she recognized him, and she said, "Oh, still doing the I love you today." So she took his picture. So she's still actively getting those pictures. Yeah, some people put up with me, and then we developed the sign for sushi. So you kind of can't take that instinct out of her to chase down the celebrities and get them doing I love you. Oh, I forgot about that. Anne, okay. Have people asked? Okay, you haven't gotten Niles yet, right? No, okay, so she hasn't found him yet. Well, one thing I have to admit to is really tracing down those people, as Jim said I used to do before. Other things have kind of taken center stage for me. I have enough, maybe plenty, so I've kind of shifted my attention to a new book project. Should I tell people? Should I say? It's not finished, it's in process. But it is related to photographs, and it's about my lifetime collection of hands. I have over 10,000 hands. No, not just flat, it's sculptures, it's in clay, it's, oh my gosh, I know you're sick of the I love you, but there's one whole chapter devoted to hands in the I love you shape. It's pretty extraordinary. All over the world. Okay, so hands, right. So she has over 10,000 pictures of hands. And they're just the hands themselves as objects. So she's quite the collection. And I don't know how she lives where she lives with all of these. I have 75 boxes. They're stacked. So, do you have okay, so I was thinking, now I don't have proof, but I probably could say I have the world's largest collection of hands, and I would challenge anybody out there to see who could beat me. And by the way, something that just occurred to me, the I love you hand shape by that author, or that artist, the Italian artist, it went for $30,000. Right? Wait, what? Oh, you should have bought it. So that sculpture, somebody paid. Oh, I wish I was there. I would have asked you for a discount. I would have asked that guy. Okay, so I don't want to cut anybody off, but somebody else had their hand raised? Okay, so Friday morning, we're going to be talking about this topic, subversitizing in deaf art and pop art. It's really a concept that talks about commercial art and advertising and how that has become the heart of her and our art, but also part of pop culture and pop art. So that will be our topic on Friday. And then Friday evening, we'll have some pictures and a discussion and stories about her experiences with Warhol. So, any other last minute questions? I'll open it up. So, we've been talking a lot about a name sign for Andy Warhol. So, we're hoping soon we will come to some kind of decision about the artist himself. This is silver. Oh, I can't wait. So what's your discussion been like so far? Oh, okay, so you have, oh, wait, oh, no, we wouldn't make any kind of determination until Silver was here. We've been having, we've been talking, but we have not made a determination. Silver, we were waiting for you. Oh, most of you said Silver. Oh, wow, really? Oh, I didn't know you were waiting for me. She doesn't have a sign name. When we talk about her, we spell Silver. No Ann. Silver. That's how we refer her. I mean, some people call her Silver with an S near her ear for Silver, and I think she's okay with it. But the sign for Silver, gold, silver, I mean, okay. If people use that, she doesn't say no, but it's not really an official formal sign name. So she doesn't have one. So, and neither does Warhol. We were waiting for you. However, it's really an interesting point. Should she have a sign name, or you were waiting for her to help with Warhol's sign name? Because she just spells it. So we spell Silver for her and Warhol for him. Leave it at that. Right? Okay, Silver, gold, California. Okay, so I asked you yesterday, did you have any idea? No, I thought they had already had the discussion. And I was like, I can't wait for the reveal. I didn't realize your discussion was on hold until you came to see me. Oh, but I hate fingerspelling. Well, some of it, I like that one, the one with the hair on the side. I mean, yeah, there's pictures like that, or the ones where his hair's really freaking out. No, I don't know about that one. Well, Andy Warhol sort of had that very strange hair look in many of his photographs. So I don't know. So should we have the discussion and decide now? No. Okay, well, how about this? Warhol. We could use that name sign, Warhol. Okay, there's somebody out here that's saying, no, it should be in this way. So everyone's weighing in the audience, having a little bit difficult time for the interpreter to kind of copy that, but okay. So we won't know about your experience with Andy Warhol till Friday night, because we'd really like to know a little bit more about the personal, social part, but and maybe do a little bit more assessment of his characters, behavior. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that, that might help us with creating the name sign. So this is Jim. If you don't mind me sort of adding my 2 cents here. Warhol, I mean, there's not a way to label him. I mean, some people have said he had a little bit of Asperger traits. He didn't like eye contact. Anne had to really force him to look at her so that she could, read his lips. And he was always very distracted. She always got the feeling that he'd be looking at her, but then he was gazing off into some other part. And even though there might not be somebody there, she said, "Look at me so I can lip read you." And he had a camera all the time. So there's some traits that she recognized that could be on the spectrum. Oh, he was very tough to lip read. And of course, I didn't bring an interpreter. I mean, I was on my own, very independent at that time and still. So I would look at him and it's like, oh my gosh, he's so hard to lip read. Because what he would like to do is put his hand in front of his mouth. You know, in Japanese culture, the women are very dainty and they'll laugh behind their hand, or when they smile, they always have their hand covering their face. He was like that too, but he would talk, like he would eat and he would have his hand in front of his mouth. It was kind of sad. Well, let me give you another example. When I was in Japan, I lived there for a year, and there were a group of deaf Japanese people, and they came, and they all did that. They all had their hand in front of their mouth. And they said, okay, well, they don't want to show grief, or when the Challenger crashed, that was the week I arrived there. And people would talk about, oh, I'm sorry, Silver, about that tragedy. And they would have their hand in front of their mouth. They didn't show their teeth and they didn't show their grief. So I thought that was very, very interesting. So then when I met Andy, he loved Japanese food. And I said, oh, I was in Japan, so let's go. And, we both liked sushi. And he would talk and he'd have his hand in front of his mouth. And I'd say, okay, this is weird. This is like Japanese people. Like he never liked, exposing his mouth, his teeth. He also hated to be touched. And so if I would touch him, it's a deaf thing, right? We're always tapping people on the shoulder to get their attention. And his friends would freak out when they would see me touch him because they're like, oh my gosh, you don't know that Andy doesn't like to be touched? So they would be behind him saying, Ann, don't touch him. And I would be like, what? Well, then after a while, I would realize, and he kind of allowed, but I'll tell you more on Friday. This is Jim. Eventually he was okay with her. He knew that was, Ann's way, and okay, I'm going to look at you, and I know that the only way that you're really going to understand me is if I don't have my hand in front of my mouth. So yeah, we became used to each other. Okay, so when we were talking about the name signs, we were looking at specific personality traits, and we understand that you have some different stories, and we feel like, you've kind of explained a little bit more. He always had the camera. What was his affect like? What was his, so we also have a Warhol, the first letter of his name, up on the forehead for his hair and for the W of Warhol. That's one discussion. We've been spelling, or L. Do you have to? Okay, so again, some people are doing that because of his hair. He was a very visual person. We could do maybe a camera, like picture by his eye. So these are just some of the things we're throwing out. Okay, so here's another one about his hair. Okay, well, this is interesting because Ann and I were having this conversation. The camera was part of his work, but he wasn't the official photographer. But even when he wasn't taking pictures, it was hanging off his neck. Yeah, he always reminded me of some kind of tourist, because, tourists always had those cameras hanging around their neck. These are some more suggestions that we have about related to his hair, to pop, to eyes. So we also like this hand shape near his eye. Okay, I'm sorry, this is Jenna. We're gonna have to hold this conversation till after lunch. I wanna thank everybody. Oh, I thought we were gonna decide now. No, let's go to lunch and then we'll converse and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, I'm here all this week now, people. This is Ann. So we don't have to do it right this moment. No, I don't like that one because now you guys are starting to make it look like Trump, and the people's mocking his hair. Okay, this is Jim. Thank you for watching our presentation. And I just briefly qualified myself by writing a book about her. And we collaborated, and she wouldn't have come without me. I wouldn't have come without her. What you see is what you get. So. And so that's the end of this presentation, and people are taking a break for lunch.